What's up everyone? For today's movie, I will tell you a story of a horror movie with a title, The Unholy. So just relax out there, and allow me to tell you what happened in the movie. The film opens in 1845, where a young woman is being hung from a tree and is having a mask nailed to her face, before the townspeople light her on fire, and speak an incantation while holding a doll to the woman's face. And after that, they left her charred corpse hanging from the tree. The present day, in the town of Banfield, Massachusetts, a disgraced journalist named Gerry Fenn gets a tip of something happening nearby. So, he goes to investigate because a farmer thinks that his cow has been marked by a cult, but Gerry figures that it was just the farmer's son painting the Metallica symbol in it. Gerry then hears something that beckons him to a nearby tree, where he finds a burnt doll, like the one seen in the opening scene, and with the date of February 31, 1845 engraved on it. But Gerry steps on the doll's head and breaks it, and said that there might be something to happen that he can write in. That night, Gerry is driving to go out of the town, but he swerves off the road when he sees a young woman in the middle of the road. He then follows her and sees that she approaches the same tree that Gerry went to earlier, and mutters something before passing out. Gerry then takes her to the home of Father Hagan, who's happened to be the young girl's uncle, and tells him that the girl's name is Alice. After that, he calls Dr. Natalie, and it is revealed that Alice is deaf-mute, which means it would have been impossible for Gerry to hear her talk. Natalie then warns him that he's going to jail if he's trying to harm Alice. Gerry then decides to stick around Banfield, so he can potentially get a story for his employers with a religious angle to it. Then, he goes to church where Father Hagan preaches, and during the sermon, Alice stands up after staring at a statue of the Virgin Mary and starts walking out. The people then follows her and watch as she goes to the tree. After standing there for a moment, Alice begins to speak that surprise everyone. She claims that she's hearing the voice of Virgin Mary herself, who is requesting through Alice that everyone should return to the tree the next day. After that, Natalie runs tests on Alice and amazed on what's happening. Gerry then reports to his former employer named Monica, who reminds him that he was fired for faking a story, and she doesn't want to hear what he has to say. He later has a dream of a ghostly woman rising from a nearby creek and crawling out. The next day, the townspeople return to the tree to see if another miracle can be performed. Then, a young paraplegic boy named Toby is brought forward together with his parents. Alice then speaks for Mary and tells Toby to walk, and to the astonishment of everyone, the boy is able to do so. Gerry then records the event, while everyone begins to pray to Mary. And inside the church, the statue of the Virgin Mary appears to cry blood. Later on, Gerry meets Bishop Gyles and Monsignor Delgarde, who are sent by the Vatican to investigate whether or not Alice really did perform a divine miracle. Alice herself becomes a media sensation, and the tree is set to become a shrine. Meanwhile, Father Hagan goes to the tree and sees the broken doll on the ground, while a ghostly apparition appears to stalk him. A while later, Gerry sets up an interview with Alice, where she says that Mary told her that Gerry misses the power he used to have with his words, and that she saw someone in need of her help. But they're interrupted because Father Hagan suddenly comes in. He then talks to Gerry in private, and he starts coughing heavily due to his emphysema. He also tells Gerry not to take advantage of Alice and exploit her for personal gains. In another instance, Gerry sits in at the church with Monsignor Delgarde, while Alice practices singing with Father Hagan. When all of a sudden, Father Hagan starts to have a violent coughing episode before he collapses on the floor. As Gerry calls for an ambulance, Alice stands in front of her uncle, and asks if he believes in Mary. And after he said yes, Alice places her hand on his chest, and he suddenly finds himself breathing normally again. Natalie later does an X-ray for Father Hagan, and compares it to one from a while back where his condition looked far more severe. Now, believing that Alice truly healed Father Hagan's condition, and proven that it is a divine miracle, the tree is officially declared a shrine, and Banfield starts to bloom its tourism industry. Later on, while Father Hagan is smoking outside, he finds a note that's stuck in the wall, which contains the information regarding the broken doll, and the shocking truth on what's really happening. Meanwhile, Gerry later talks to Natalie about the doll, where she tells him that those particular dolls are meant to be good luck, but are also known for trapping evil things, by putting the impossible date like February 31st to keep them inside forever. They then walk by the same creek he saw in his dream, and he once again sees the apparition of the evil being. He then tells Natalie that he wants to speak to Father Hagan. In another instance, Father Hagan goes to the confession room when he hears that someone is there to confess. Then, a woman on the other side begins to speak and condemns him, telling him that she healed him and he repaid her with doubt over the miracle. Father Hagan then fearfully steps out, and is confronted by the evil ghost who attacks him. And when Gerry arrives at the church, he finds Father Hagan, hung by the neck in what is supposed to be a suicide. After the medics take his body out, Gerry speaks to Bishop Gyles, who asks him to keep quiet on the notion that a man of the cloth took his own life. Gerry then interviews Alice again, and after reviewing the footage later that night, he slows down the footage that reveals something hidden, the evil ghost briefly flashing, and shocks him. During Father Hagan's funeral, Gerry and Natalie look in the church basement where they find documents in Latin about demons and witches, and they also find out the notebook that Father Hagan discovers before his death. Then, it reveals that it is a written piece on Mary Elnor, who was a healer in her time, but anybody who doubted her would meet a grim fate. The townspeople at that time turned on her, who confessed to working for Satan. They then put her the mask of the Virgin Mary nailed to her face and was burned to death while trapping her spirit in the doll that Gerry broke. Gerry and Natalie are then found and attacked by Mary's ghost, but they escape the church and head off to warn Alice. Meanwhile, at the funeral, Alice stands up during the service and tells the people that Mary wants them to gather at the shrine later that night for a special service. Gerry and Natalie then arrives but a little bit late, so they decide to go to the Archdiocese of Boston and talk to Bishop Gyles and Monsignor Delgarde to show them what they find on Mary and the truth about who really is making those supposed to be miracles. Unexpectedly, Bishop Gyles already knew about this, while Monsignor Delgarde notes that he was never told about it. Then, the bishop tells them that he doesn't want anything to stop the service. After that, Gerry does more research on Mary and learns that before she died, she had a child that was adopted by a man named Alice Pagett, which means Alice is Mary's descendant, and Mary made a deal with the devil to live on through her children, and so on. Gerry is then attacked by Mary's ghost again, but Monsignor Delgarde wards her off, and now convinced of what Gerry was talking about. As Bishop Gyles gets the shrine service in order, Monsignor Delgarde joins Gerry and Natalie in going to the church to bless the doll in an attempt to return Mary's spirit unto it. But when Monsignor lights it on fire, the flames spread up to the large cross on the wall, which falls off and impales him, setting him on fire as well. Gerry and Natalie then tries to save him, but they're too late, so they decide to run out and head over to the service to warn Alice and the townspeople. Meanwhile, the service is well underway. While Alice is speaking in front of the townspeople, saying they all need to have faith in Mary, not knowing that Mary is set to take all of their faith to become more powerful. Gerry and Natalie then gets there, and realize that the only way to stop Mary is to get everyone in attendance to doubt her power. So, Gerry decides to tell the crowd that he faked the whole thing and that Alice is not really a healer. He makes up some facts about what happened with her being able to hear and Toby walking, but claims those are just medical effects. With Natalie also joining in, the crowd starts to boo and renounce their faith in Mary. Because of that, Mary is pissed off and begins to set the tree on fire. So the townspeople run out just as her ghost emerges and tries to attack them. But the young boy Toby loses control of his legs again. Luckily, Natalie carries him out to safety before anything happens to him. Bishop Gyles then attempts to subdue the evil spirit, but Mary presses her hand against his chest and disintegrates him. And when she goes after Gerry and attacks him, Alice stands in the way and takes the hit. With Mary having killed her last descendant, her spirit can no longer live on, and she screams as she fades into oblivion. Gerry then holds Alice's body and tearfully prays to God for her survival. And after a while, a true miracle happens. Alice wakes up, and Gerry hugs her happily. After that scene, Gerry and Natalie then go with Alice to Father Hagan's grave to honor him. Although Alice is once again deaf-mute, Gerry finds a way to communicate with her. Then he tells Natalie that he is stunned that Alice survived, since she had no pulse and wasn't breathing when he held her. But Natalie thinks that maybe God really did work a miracle. Before the movie ends, a verse from Matthew 7:15 appears, saying, "Beware of false prophets, which come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly, they are ravening wolves. And the last thing we see is the statue of the Virgin Mary crying blood again. And that's the end of the story. Thank you for watching, everyone. Please don't forget to hit the subscribe button. See you in our next movie recap.